Although it was generally accepted that all of the most primal divine energy in the universe was spurred into existence from nothingness and formed the current divine realm, it was also acknowledged that divine energy couldn't created nor destroyed, only transformed from one form of energy to another. However, this didn't mean that it was absolutely impossible to create or destroy divine energy, only that the power of law required to do so was beyond people's understanding and currently unreachable. Vanitas and Scarlet were hopeful that all the divine energy, even the most primal form of divine energy, devoured by the divine abyss of absolute beginning since the beginning of time, had not been destroyed by its unimaginable crushing force. After all, if such divine energy had not been destroyed but had been accumulating all this time, it would most likely be the key to elevating their heavenly god power to a higher realm of power. That said, even though Vanitas and his wife, Scarlet, had decided, they still couldn't help but feel apprehension and fear as they approached the divine abyss of absolute beginning. No matter how lofty their statuses or high their power was, they still felt small and insignificant in the face of such an enormous, crushing force of space. It's not too late for us to turn back now if you feel the slightest hint of uncertainty in being able to break us through the countless layers of crushing space, Scarlet softly said, feeling a little nervous. However, Vanitas tightened his grasp on her hand and shook his head with a smile, replying, "Have you forgotten who your husband is, my love? I am Heavenly God Divine Void, the foremost expert in the law of space. I have full confidence in taking us inside the divine abyss of absolutely beginning. My apprehension and fear mostly comes from the unknown that awaits us within its depths. This is an uncharted region, never explored by any man, god, or devil. We don't know what to expect inside, so its dangers could be beyond our wildest imagination," Vanita sighed. "Finding out the secrets of the divine abyss of absolute beginning has always been our wish. Since we have decided to explore it together, I won't have any regrets whether we live or die through this," Scarlet smiled. They weren't just husband and wife but also lifelong dual cultivation partners. One was the peak heavenly god of space, and the other was the peak heavenly god of fire. With their individual power, they stood among the top 10 strongest heavenly gods in the divine realm. However, few knew that when they worked together, the synergy of their combined might would allow them to stand at the apex of the divine realm. Even the other 8 strongest heavenly gods wouldn't be their match if they fought together. Most heavenly matched couple and foremost leading figures in the divine realm, it was also because of their reputation that they had their responsibilities to be trailblazers of the unknown. "You really won't regret, even though I could be taking you into a region of death?" Vanitas asked. "With you to accompany me, what is there to regret? If it's life, we'll seek it. If it's death, we'll accept it," Scarlet firmly answered before softly laughing. "Even if we do die, it also wouldn't be too bad to explore the secrets of the afterlife together." "I don't fear anything as long as I'm with you, Vanitas," Scarlet added intimately. Vanitas smiled back at her with a gentle gaze, full of affection, before his eyes flashed with determination. "Then let us be on our way." With those words uttered, Vanitas curled the terrifying crushing force of space ahead with his heavenly divine power and constructed a spatial tunnel that drilled into the depths of the divine abyss of absolute beginning. However, the crushing force of the divine abyss of absolute beginning wasn't something that could be tamed by a peak heavenly god of space. Not even a full breath passed before the spatial tunnel deformed, fragmented, and then swept away by the flow of crushing space. Even so, Vanitas was only testing the waters and had yet to use his full power. He knew the path ahead wouldn't be smooth. After he confirmed the viable route ahead, he wrapped his arm his wife's waist. "Hold on tight, my love. It's going to be a rocky ride ahead," Vanitas stated. Scarlet nodded, embracing him tightly like it had been practiced millions of times. Shortly after, while holding his wife, Vanitas dived through a newly constructed spatial tunnel with unimaginable speed. The new spatial tunnel easily deformed and fragmented like the first, but with Vanitas's power of space, the new spatial tunnel continuously repaired itself. Even so, it didn't stop the terrifying crushing force of the divine abyss of absolute beginning from slipping inside like gusts of wind. Each sliver of crushing force had the power to rip gods and devils to shreds. Despite the dangerous journey ahead, Vanitas was still the heavenly god of space. He knew the law of space like the back of his hand and skillfully evaded all the spatial turbulence and fractures within his spatial tunnel. Even so, he was no different from a small boat sailing through a storm of strong wind, heavy rain, and rocky waters. The slightest mistake would cause it to capsize. One breath turned into 10 breaths, and 10 breaths became 100 breaths. The couple passed through thousands upon thousands of layers of crushing space with breakneck speed, and yet there didn't seem to be an end to it. 10,000s. 100,000s. Millions of layers of crushing space later, Vanitas frowned without losing focus. Given his speed and the passage of time, the distance he traveled should have been enough to loop around the divine abyss of absolute beginning 3 times. And yet, there were still no signs of entering into the inner depths of the divine abyss of absolute beginning. More alarmingly, Vanitas sensed the divine abyss of absolute beginning growing bigger as he dived deeper into it with his wife. It was to the extent that he felt the space within the divine abyss of absolute beginning was even bigger than the divine realm itself and not by a small margin. Given his affinity with space, what he sensed shouldn't be an illusion. However, even he, the heavenly god of space, couldn't remain calm when he felt the space grow to an infinite number of divine realms. The world within the divine abyss of absolute beginning was so large and boundless that it was mortifying, completely incomprehensible, and beyond his wildest imagination. Nothing prepared him and his wife for what they discovered. When the final layer of crushing space was breached, Vanitas and Scarlet immediately felt their souls screamed with danger, making their hair stand on end, and their hearts turn chilly cold. The divine abyss of absolute nothingness. The largest and most central black hole in the divine realm. The denizens of the divine realm mostly believed it was a land of death and destruction. Anything and everything that ever fell into it would be ground to dust and atoms by the absolute crushing power of space and gravity. Even Vanitas and Scarlet were no exceptions to such a belief. However, what they found once they had truly entered the depths of the divine abyss of absolutely nothingness was far beyond anything they had imagined. At the same time, the danger that screamed from their very souls was not caused by any imminent danger but due to the unpredictable number of dangers that lurked in their surroundings, like well-hidden landmines, just waiting for them to step on and erupt. But despite the untold dangers in this vast, unknown world, they couldn't help but marvel at its beauty. The concentrated divine energy they hoped to find, they found it. However, its concentration and density were also beyond anything they had imagined despite keeping their minds open to the possibilities. The deeply concentrated divine energy had actually formed an unimaginably long, solid thread that seemed nigh indestructible. Furthermore, this thread of divine energy stretched through the vast dark void like an enormous neural network of unprecedented, unparalleled scale. It emitted light of various colors of the rainbow. There were even some colors Vanitas and Scarlet didn't think existed, or rather, they never knew of their existence due to the limit of their perceptions. If they had not sensed the immense power of divine energy inside the threads of divine energy, they would have never known they were even looking at the concentrated, solid form of divine energy. It took a while before Vanitas and Scarlet regained their senses. The laws in this place is. I don't think this is the same world we came from, Vanitas. Scarlet voiced her doubts with alarm after noticing her control over the law of fire had weakened substantially, to the point that she felt like a mortal again. Rather than a different world, I feel like it is more accurate to say we have entered a whole different dimension, Vanitas solemnly stated after serious thought. Even his control over the law of space had been severely restricted. As for the other minor laws he had comprehended, his control over them was practically non-existent. The only reason such a thing would happen was if they had entered a higher dimension where the laws were incomparably much firmer. Perhaps they had been peak existences in the divine realm. But here, in this unknown dimension, they were no different from ants, and that could still be an overestimation. We don't belong here. We should leave, Vanitas, Scarlet suggested, surprised by the fearful tone of her own voice. However, it couldn't be helped to feel such fear. After becoming a peak heavenly god, she had become one of the strongest beings in the divine realm, and there were few existences that could threaten her life. Thus, the notion of fear had disappeared. Unfortunately, the power that allowed her to feel fearless couldn't be wielded, making her feel not much different from a weak, helpless mortal. Simply staying in this unknown dimension felt suffocating. Nevertheless, despite Scarlet's careful suggestion, Vanitas stubbornly shook his head and tightened his grasp on her hand. We've already come this far, my love. It would be a pity if we returned empty-handed. At the very least, we should try to harvest some divine energy from this place. It might help us gain insight into the path to transcend heavenly gods. You're absolutely right, dear. We can't return empty-handed, Scarlet smiled after calming down and regaining her wits. I have already braced myself for the possibility of death when I chose to accompany you here. I can't believe I would be so unnerved by the changes upon reaching this place, Scarlet softly muttered, feeling slightly disappointed with herself. It appeared she was a little lacking in mental cultivation. Nevertheless, despite calming down, her hands continued to shake from subconscious fear. The sense of security brought by Vanitas's grip had little effect in suppressing it. This concentrated divine energy here seems to be the closest. Let's start there, Vanitas guided Scarlet to the nearest thread of divine energy. Although it was called a thread of divine energy, it was as thick as a fully grown watermelon and boundless in length. The divine energy also flowed through it very quickly, seemingly at light speed. As for its age, its boundless primal aura seemed to suggest the neural network of divine energy had existed for much longer than the divine realm itself. Scarlet suddenly paused as she glanced into the dark void with doubt. What's wrong? Vanitas halted to check. Scarlet frowned before shaking. It's nothing. I thought I saw something move in the void. It must have been my imagination. If you thought you saw something move, then something must have definitely moved, Vanitas believed in his wife's sense. As heavenly gods, it would be strange to be fooled by their own imagination. And considering they were in such a dangerous, unknown dimension, it was better to doubt than to disbelieve. Don't doubt what your senses, my love, Vanitas added, pulling Scarlet closer before peering into the dark void vigilant. His senses were heightened to the limits. Time passed, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, considering they were in such an extraordinary place, where everything seemed extraordinary in and of itself, such ordinariness was, without a doubt, concerning. The silence was loud, and the scream of danger even louder. Although Vanitas failed to pinpoint the threat, he felt the illusion of being eyed by an invisible predator. Something was watching him from the dark void. When you gaze into the abyss gazed back at you. Vanitas thought ruefully. This unintended staring contest lasted several minutes before the unknown party lost its patience and moved. In that instant, Vanitas finally noticed it, but not because he could see it, he only saw the distortion of space that outlined its existence. Scarlet also locked onto its location. However, Vanitas and Scarlet were both alarmed. Despite knowing something was there, in that exact spot, they couldn't see it nor sense its existence at all, only its dwindling curiosity and increasing killing intent. It was like an apex predator that saw something strange for the first time and wondered whether they were food or not. What is this thing? Why can't I sense or see it? This unknown creature is from a higher dimension. I don't think our sensory organs and divine perceptions from the lower dimension can perceive its true appearance. Oh, no. It has determined to kill us. The instant Scarlet and Vanitas sensed the invisible creature's killing intent erupt explosively, only one thought went through their mind: flee. Ding. You have finished reading a memory fragment of one of your past lives. Your insight in the divine realm has increased. Your comprehension of the law of space has increased. Your comprehension of the law of fire has increased. Your comprehension of the law of nothingness has increased. Spatial law, 6.75%. Fire law, 5.2%. Nihility law, 0.3%. Along with the abrupt end of the distant memory, a string of system notifications shifted Vaan's attention. Although Vaan didn't get to see what kind of fate awaited the peak heavenly god duo after the invisible threat chased them, he gained a lot of information about the two heavenly gods, the divine realm, and some insight into the unknown dimension they had stumbled inside. Vanitas, the heavenly god of space. Divine title, heavenly god divine void. Scarlet, the heavenly god of fire. Divine title, heavenly god Scarlet Sea. Two peak existences from the earlier era of the divine realm. Empyrean Scarlet Sea was also a person from the divine realm. Although Vaan had never seen Empyrean Scarlet Sea's true appearance and her character was a stark contrast compared to heavenly god Scarlet Sea in the distant memory, he knew they were the same person. It didn't take a genius to draw the connection between the two. I must admit, Empyrean Scarlet Sea was quite the peerless beauty. Vaan clicked his tongue as he recalled Scarlet's goddess-like appearance in the distant memory. As for heavenly god divine void, Vanitas. That should have been who he was in one of his past lives. But contrary to his current promiscuous life, Vanitas was a faithful man with only one wife. However, Vaan understood why Vanitas, a dual cultivator, only had one wife. Scarlet was undoubtedly the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. All other women's beauty paled in front of her. Furthermore, Scarlet was extremely gifted and competent, rivaling Vanitas in power and wisdom. With such a mighty wife, how could Vanitas dare to look for other women? A capable man could have multiple wives, while an incapable man could only dream of it. Although Vanitas wasn't an incapable man, he had an extremely capable first wife. Thus, it could only be said that he wasn't capable enough. Vaan cross-referenced Empyrean Scarlet Sea's story and experience with the newly acquired information from the distant memory before he inferred the events that followed. Vanitas and Scarlet promised to live and die together, but Vanitas most likely couldn't bear to see his wife die in front of him. Thus, he must have sacrificed himself to send her back to the divine realm and let her live on. Vaan mused. Subsequently, Scarlet, who had her life saved, couldn't die to follow Vanitas in death as it would make his sacrifice meaningless. As such, she was forced to live on, bearing all the grief and loss alone. The betrayal of her trust must have twisted her heart and given birth to hatred and resentment. As a result, the Empyrean Scarlet Sea detests love and finds it meaningless. Vaan continued to contemplate. In truth, Empyrean Scarlet Sea had never told Vaan about her view on men and love. Vaan had figured it out himself from the impression he received based on the few interactions he had with her when she possessed Henrietta's body. Nevertheless, Empyrean Scarlet Sea's matters were of little importance to the present Vaan as he had learned of something more concerning, the threat posed by the unknown higher dimension. Although Empyrean Scarlet Sea successfully fled to the divine realm, her escape must have also left behind traces that allowed denizens of the unknown higher dimension to reach the divine realm. The unknown invaders with strength beyond the true divinity realm in Empyrean Scarlet Sea's story were most likely from that very higher dimension. Vaan couldn't help but lament with a sigh as he reached this conclusion. What Vanitas had done was very selfish and also stupid. Although he saved the love of his life, he screwed over the divine realm and made his current life more difficult. Vaan felt quite certain that the higher dimension in the distant memory he saw was not a part of chaos. Although it was brief, Vaan had been to chaos before and had even seen what it was like through the dimensional crack. The boundless void in chaos was suffused with a red hue due to the ever-present power of existence. On the other hand, the void in the unknown higher dimension was dark, like the present universe. In other words, there was another boundless world besides chaos and his universe. Although Vaan didn't know if the unknown higher dimension was bigger than chaos, it was definitely bigger than the divine realm, at least according to what he had sensed through Vanitas inside the memory fragment. Compared to the extinction-level threat posed by the unknown higher dimension, Gehenna's threat seemed insignificant. In front is Gehenna, and behind is the higher dimension. There's no path of retreat. The only path is forward, Vaan thought. The current state of the divine realm was unknown, and there was no telling how many denizens of the higher dimension invaded the current universe. Thus, fleeing into the sea of stars to look for another habitable planet was the same as seeking certain death. After all, the threat posed by rank 6 divine beings was not the same as the threat posed by existences potentially above rank 13. What a difficult world we live in. Vaan's frown deepened. The newly acquired information had seriously thrown a wrench in his plans. However, he was glad he found out rather than stay ignorant. The sense of urgency and desire for power in his heart surged uncontrollably. Even if he had to risk starting a continental war, he had to unify Pangaea in the shortest time possible. Only then would he have access to all possible knowledge, resources, and manpower in the world. Vaan had enough self-awareness to understand that while he might have already become the strongest person in Pangaea, he was still an insignificant ant in the grand scheme of things. The power of one man was limited, perhaps only enough to cause a small ripple in the great ocean. On the other hand, the power of an entire race could create wonders and miracles. Vaan seemingly had a breakthrough in his mental state. After knowing what must be done, he no longer cared whether he exposed his true identity and capability to the people of the great Rathalos Empire. He boldly advanced to the top of the Black Mountain, where the suppressive force of gravity was the greatest, to comprehend as much of the law of space in the shortest time possible. The weak relied on their intelligence, while the strong made use of their strength. I will cow this world into submission with strength so great people can only despair and look up to, never dare to compare. Vaan's eyes flickered with a fierce glint. The reason he was reborn. The reason he was gifted with unparalleled talent. He was beginning to understand the purpose of his life. He was burdened with a great mission that no other could or hoped to realize. Ever since Vaan had ascended to the 490th mountain step, he had long drawn the attention of everyone around the Black Mountain. Even the elderly warriors from the 495th mountain step and beyond were no exception. After all, anyone who could practice under the gravitational pressure of the 490th to 530th mountain steps was considered a top powerhouse in the entire Great Rathalos Empire. As such, while the ordinary observing warriors at the foot of the mountain were full of shock and disbelief, these elderly warriors' reactions to Vaan's ascension were milder. Rather, they were mostly amazed than shocked. However, that amazement quickly turned into shock when Vaan reached the 540th mountain step. Nevertheless, Vaan didn't stop there, and their expressions became more colorful, from shock to greater shock and from greater shock to dumbfounded. They didn't know what to think or feel when Vaan overcame the pressure of the 570th mountain step, which even Emperor Vaan struggled to endure. When Vaan ascended to the 600th mountain step, all their conflicting and bewildering emotions turned into worship and awe. Regardless of whether Vaan had used his capabilities or relied on external assistance to reach the 600th mountain step, he had undoubtedly created an unprecedented legend in the Great Rathalos Empire. I must be dreaming. That young man has ascended to a height that even the mighty Sea Emperor could not reach. How is that even possible? Does that mean his strength is even greater than his Imperial Majesty and the Sea Emperor? That's impossible. No one can surpass his Imperial Majesty and the Sea Emperor. That kid just has monstrous talent and potential. Yes, that must be it. Monstrous talent and potential? Are you kidding me? Sheer talent and potential can't make up for such a huge gap in body refinement. This kid's internal organs must be made of tempered tungsten or something. It didn't take for the entire Black Mountain to erupt into heated discussions as everyone speculated Vaan's background and true ability. Regardless of the warriors' envy and awe, not a single person could take their eyes off Vaan's ascending figure. Most of the younger warriors even hoped he could reach the very top of the Black Mountain and create an unsurpassable legend that would be remembered for thousands of years. To the younger warriors, just reaching the 450th mountain step was already a distant goal. Thus, they wouldn't even dare compare themselves to Vaan. It was simply exciting to bear witness to the birth of a legend. The 667th mountain step, the absolute peak of the Black Mountain. No one could imagine the terrifying gravitational pressure it possessed. However, everyone believed it wasn't something a transcendent rank body refiner could bear. When Vaan ascended to the peak, everyone at the foot of the Black Mountain cheered with excitement. Of course, Vaan himself was unconcerned with other people. Even with Vaan's current physical attributes, he found it exceedingly difficult to endure the gravitational pressure of the Black Mountain. It was as if all of the Black Mountain's gravitational force had been channeled into a single point, bearing down on Vaan. The gravity was so immense that even demigods would be brought to their knees. However, it was just the kind of pressure Vaan needed to temper his body as he perceived the laws, killing two birds with one stone. Nevertheless, without using any supportive skills to alleviate the pressure, Vaan's body started breaking apart, his skin cracked, his blood vessels burst, and his organs ruptured, only to be restored by his inhuman regenerative ability. Under the constant cycle of destruction and recreation of his body, Vaan experienced drastic improvements. Ding! Your comprehension of the law of space has increased by 0.1%. Your comprehension of the law of Earth has increased by 0.4%. Your affinity to the Earth has been raised by 1%. Your physical body has been tempered by gravity. Your pain tolerance has improved. Vaan continued to receive strings of notifications from the system as he endured the torturous, self-mutilating meditation, which burdened both his body and mind. The pain felt like his entire being was submerged inside a giant cauldron of life-threatening flames, refining his body and soul. He didn't get a single chance of respite. The slightest relaxation could prove fatal. Ding! Your body's overall defensive attributes have reached the early-level transcendent rank. Your soul has become slightly more condensed and one step closer to divine. As Vaan's body underwent rapid improvement, his soul and comprehension of the laws continued to improve. However, compared to his comprehension of the laws, the progress in his soul improvement seemed incomparably slower. Given the current rate of improvement, even if he comprehended 10% of the law of space, it still wouldn't be enough to form his divine soul. Vaan's eyes suddenly flashed with enlightenment. Understanding the power of laws could indeed achieve the divine soul. However, it isn't an absolute prerequisite to reaching the divine, Vaan understood. As his comprehension of the law of space improved, Vaan gained a deeper understanding of the divine way. The power of laws could allow him to become a divine being, but it wasn't the only path to forging the divine soul. If anything, the power of laws was more supplementary in augmenting one's combat prowess than promoting one's level of existence. I'll be making a grave mistake if I take the power of laws as the answer to reaching the divine, Vaan thought. He felt that achieving the divine through the power of laws was an inferior path. If he became one with the law of space, he could indeed become a mighty divine being with a lifespan as long as the sun and moon. However, that would be his limit, at the level of the laws. How could someone who wished to be supreme settle for the same level as the heavenly laws? His ambition lay above the heavenly laws. I can comprehend the law of space to the absolute peak, but I must never tie my existence to it or any other law. That would lower the upper limit of my growth. Vaan felt certain in the truth of his conclusion because of the nihility law, the law of nothingness. His 0.3% comprehension of the nihility law had never slipped his mind. In fact, it had grabbed much of his attention. The nihility law also contained the power of a law. However, its power should be above all other heavenly laws. After all, it's the most primal law, even more ancient than the universe itself. As for anything above the nihility law, Vaan did not know. However, what he did know was that he couldn't rashly enter the divine no matter how much he desired power. There must be a suitable divine soul path for me, one that doesn't require fusing with the heavenly laws. Previous chapter. All the attention in Black Mountain had been stolen away by Vaan's unprecedented achievement. His brilliance burned so brightly that no one within the Black Mountain paid attention to the chaos spreading outside of it. Ba-dump. Many hearts thumped loudly whenever the concerned warriors witnessed Vaan's body crack under the gravitational pressure only to reform itself. No one knew how long Vaan could last under such unimaginable suppressive power, but no one wished for him to fall. The natural respect and worship for the strong ingrained in every warrior didn't permit them to desire otherwise. At that point, it no longer mattered who Vaan was or where he came from. Even if he weren't someone from their empire, their feelings wouldn't necessarily change. After all, to bear witness to the birth of someone greater than Emperor Vaan and the Sea Emperor was a form of glory, and having such a strong human emerge from their empire was a good thing for humanity. Splurt. Blood burst from the cracks on Vaan's skin as his body broke down again, only to regenerate shortly after. The process of destruction and recreation of the body had repeated over several dozens, soaking the mountain top in his blood. It was a bloody scene no one would have believed was created by one man had they not seen it themselves. Vaan's body was like a vessel of boundless blood as his bone marrow continuously produced new blood to restore his physical condition to its peak. Although Vaan showed no sign of fatigue, he was definitely feeling the burden. After all, the energy of his bone marrow wasn't limitless, nor did it come from nothing. As such, after enduring 50 cycles of bodily destruction and recreation, Vaan retrieved a few magical plants with restorative properties from heaven-swallowing space and directly consumed them. Ding! You have consumed a rank 4 blood-invigorating flower. You have consumed a rank 4 sun-glazed Ganoderma. You have consumed a stalk of peak rank 4 blithe Nirvana grass. Effectiveness of all fire attribute magical plants has increased by 100%. Your body has completely absorbed the efficacy of the fire attribute magical plants. Your blood potency has greatly increased. Your marrow energy has fully restored. For a short period, your regenerative abilities will be 100% more effective. After consuming the blood-enhancing magical plants, Vaan's blood was filled with medicinal power as they turned scorching hot like fire. Every new wound that opened on the surface of his flesh disappeared almost instantly. It was as if the brief cracks that appeared were mere illusions. Ding! Your physical body has been tempered by gravity. Your physical body has been tempered by gravity. Vaan continued to endure the self-mutilating cultivation without a complaint. Although blood kept splurting out from the cracks in his skin, the amount had been greatly reduced compared to the initial process. As his fleshly body improved at an unbelievable rate under the power of gravity and medicine, it became less susceptible to cracking under pressure. My body is a piece of iron. With my blood as the fire and the Black Mountain as my hammer, I will temper my physical self to the limit and forge an indestructible body. Vaan steeled his resolve. Ding! Your body's overall defensive attributes have reached the peak early level transcendent rank. You have consumed a peak rank for Dragon Jade Lotus. You have consumed 9 drops of divine rank stalactite milk. Your physical body has been tempered by gravity and medicinal power. Your body's overall defensive attributes have reached the middle level transcendent rank. Your body's overall defensive attributes have reached the peak middle level transcendent rank. Your body's affinity to the earth has reached 80%. Mid-rank earth spirit body, high-rank earth spirit body. You have acquired earth authority. Vaan's body was already improving very quickly. But after he consumed higher quality magical plants and precious heavenly elixirs without hesitation, his improvement rate could only be described as insane. In a mere 6 hours, Vaan's physical body was tempered to a level that most body refiners couldn't achieve in their decades or centuries of cultivation. However, it was also understandable. After all, other body refiners did not have a divine rank physique and bloodline like Vaan, nor did they have precious magical plants and heavenly elixirs like the divine rank stalactite milk to consume recklessly. Furthermore, they couldn't enjoy the full might of the Black Mountain in tempering their bodies. Anyone else in Vaan's shoes would have long died under the crushing force of the Black Mountain before they could enjoy its tempering benefits, let alone with precious magical plants and heavenly elixirs to indulge in. When the body refining masters watched Vaan cultivate on the peak of the Black Mountain, they all felt a chill run down their spines. Anyone at their level could endure hardship in the process of pushing their bodies to the extreme limits. However, none of them had ever seen anyone refine their body in such a cruel and gruesome way. It shook their hearts greatly. There wasn't a single spot on Vaan's body that wasn't covered by blood. After Vaan's body reached a level that stopped cracking under the Black Mountain's crushing pressure, his blood quickly dried under his high bodily heat, forming a thin layer of blood crust. Vaan remained motionless like a firm mountain under such a condition. Because of that, no one knew if he was alive or dead. Sadness permeated the hearts of many warriors as they assumed his death. They couldn't help but mourn his silent passing. Among the crowds of warriors gathered at the foot of the Black Mountain, Barucha, who had come from the martial hall, became absent-minded with a sense of loss. He was unwilling to believe in Vaan's death. An old master sighed. Today, a legend was born, shining brightly like the sun in the sky. Everyone was dazzled by its brilliance. Unfortunately, it was also short-lived like the shooting stars. Young Master Vanderlyn isn't dead. He can't be dead. Barucha quickly regained his wits as he denied the increasing murmurs of assumption regarding Vaan's death. He was unwilling to believe it. The person had given Barucha far too many surprises since the beginning of their encounter. When they met, Barucha already felt the person was extraordinary. However, it was only after the person ascended to the top of the Black Mountain did he see how extraordinary the person truly was. It didn't seem likely for such an extraordinary person to roll over and die just like that. Everyone is mistaken. Young Master Vanderlyn is definitely alive, Barucha silently convinced himself despite having no confidence or proof. Young Master Vanderlyn? A nearby peak rank 3 body refiner, seemingly someone of notable status, turned to Barucha before briefly evaluating him. This junior brother. Are you saying the person on the mountain peak is Vanderlyn Pendragon, the new honorary corps member who has been the topic of gossip in the martial hall recently? Yes. Barucha answered. Although Vaan's name was already known among a few people present, it quickly became widespread with Barucha's confirmation. At the same time, no one found his surname inappropriate whatsoever, at least not after what he had achieved. So his name is Vanderlyn Pendragon. Huh, what an imposing name, but it is also quite fitting. Unless someone else can also reach the peak, the top seat will remain his, an eternal legend. It's not necessary for someone to reach the top before they can remove the corpse from the. A young warrior didn't finish commenting before he received dozens of fierce glares. What utter nonsense. You better watch your tongue, boy, an elderly warrior snapped at the young warrior after descending the Black Mountain. Young Pendragon's legend might have been short, but he did reach the top with his own abilities. His seat is fully deserving and shouldn't be removed by foul means. I will not allow anyone to dishonor young Pendragon. If someone wants him off the top seat, then climb to the peak with their own strength, the elderly warrior stated. In fact, the elderly warrior did not need to say so much. Many warriors viewed Vaan's achievement as sacred, something comparable to how others treat divine relics of their religious gods. For the unqualified to act or even think of disrespecting Vaan's body was a serious taint to their warrior's pride. As such, the young warrior immediately felt immensely regretful after his careless remark. The crowd gradually dispersed after some time as many warriors thought they had lingered around the Black Mountain long enough. Since there was nothing left to see, most of them went back to doing their own things. Only a small minority and newcomers remained behind to admire and sigh over Vaan's seemingly unfortunate fate. Of course, Vaan had been conscious the whole time. Although he remained motionless and didn't seem to display any sign of life, his body continued to improve under the pressure of the Black Mountain, albeit at a turtle pace compared to before. Originally, his high aura cultivation had caused great strain on his blood vessels and meridians. But now that his constitution caught up, such strain disappeared. As such, he could further increase his aura cultivation without consequences. However, since everyone was starting to believe he was dead, it would be a pity to give up his current cover. After all, unless people realized he was still alive, it was unlikely for anyone to try removing him from the Black Mountain. In other words, Vaan could stay on the Black Mountain to perceive the laws and monitor the imperial capital indefinitely, should he wish to. After he acquired the high-rank Earth Spirit body and gained Earth authority, he could feel much more of the Earth, allowing his senses to reach much further. Information was constantly fed to him from all directions. It wasn't far-fetched to say that countless people within the imperial capital were his eyes and ears without their own knowledge. He was silently monitoring the situation at all times with a portion of his consciousness. The only disadvantage of such passive spying was that he couldn't eavesdrop on people's conversations outside his detection range and those staying in special anti-detection fields. However, Vaan had also taken proactive measures to counter such an obvious flaw. He relied on the dragons and their magic. The number of young dragon elites performing recon in the Great Rathalos Empire alone had increased to 25 out of the 50 original young dragon elites. Furthermore, it occurred in the last 24 hours. Every country has its own darkness, and Vaan knew the glorious and mighty Great Rathalos Empire was no exception. However, even Vaan was surprised when he discovered how deeply rooted and hidden the darkness was in the Great Rathalos Empire. Moreover, its force was far greater than he had imagined. Yet despite the great force the darkness wielded, it still remained in obscurity, biding its time patiently for the right moment to shock the world. If the people of the Great Rathalos Empire learned as much about this hidden force as Vaan did, they would have been absolutely horrified. After all, it was a force capable of overturning the sovereignty of the Great Rathalos Empire, if no other force intervened. Naturally, since Vaan was around, he wouldn't let that happen, especially because it most likely involved another devil's contractor. Even if Vaan was wrong in his guess, it shouldn't be far off. He was certain this hidden force had strong ties to the demons of Gehenna one way or another. Otherwise, how could it elude the eyes of everyone for so long? The shadows of demons were everywhere. Kizi, Vaan willed. What is your order, Supreme Leader? Kizi's sweet, compliant voice was immediately heard as if she had been on standby, awaiting his command. Give me an update on the sacred Tirtha and Della Rosa household, Vaan demanded. Among the areas where Vaan's omnisense could not reach, the sacred Tirtha and territory of the Della Rosa household were at the top of the list. Not only were these two places very large, but they also accommodated many people, particularly shamans, witch doctors, and those with the potential to become one of the two. Shamans practiced the art of divination and healing, while witch doctors studied the art of breaking curses and curing diseases. The sacred Tirtha was precisely a place for training shamans and witch doctors. Not only had it trained the most shamans and witch doctors in the history of the empire, but it also provided the highest healing water and treatment to warriors. Countless warriors were greatly indebted to its river of healing and pond of rebirth. But while the warriors of the empire saw the sacred Tirtha as the most sacred place, deserving of the highest respect, Vaan found it very suspicious. It was easily the safest place to hide something. Previous chapter. In the past 2 days, we have noticed the members of the Della Rosa household have been paying visits to the sacred Tirtha with increasing frequency. Although we have yet to learn the reason, we have also discovered that they were all people of high status in the sacred Tirtha, Supreme Leader. Not surprising, considering the great shaman is a Della Rosa. In a sense, the sacred Tirtha can be regarded as an extension of the Della Rosa's power. Speaking of the great shaman, Kavat found something interesting while digging into the history of the Della Rosa household, Supreme Leader, Kizi suddenly recalled. Oh. Let's hear it then, Vaan replied with intrigue. Yes, Supreme Leader, Kizi faithfully reported. According to Kavat, Laymana Della Rosa, the current great shaman who controls the sacred Tirtha, encountered a problem during the fetal period and was born with an innate defect called the broken meridians defect. Supposedly, her meridians weren't evenly formed. Dozens of small areas within her meridians were either thinner or thicker than usual, leading to irregular blood flow and an overall weak constitution. Someone with this kind of innate defect was supposed to be destined for a very short life. However, what's interesting is that not only is Laymana Della Rosa still alive, she's not even a witch. Laymana Della Rosa. Vaan contemplated. According to the information they had gathered from their investigation, Laymana Della Rosa was the previous matriarch of the Della Rosa household and the youngest daughter of Laetitia Della Rosa. Although Laetitia Della Rosa was only the fifth elder in the Della Rosa household 300 years ago, the supreme elder, Galen Della Rosa, was her father. After Gehenna descended, Laetitia's father continued to hold the position of supreme elder in the family until the sacred Tirtha was founded. Once the status of shamans and witch doctors was established, Galen transferred his position of authority to his daughter and retired from household management over 270 years ago. The Della Rosa household did not produce any outstanding warriors in its history, but it did train the most excellent shamans and witch doctors every generation. Under Laetitia's management as the supreme elder, the Della Rosa household accumulated merit through its acts of life-saving grace and garnered respect from everyone, allowing it to become one of the top families in the empire despite its lack of power. Laetitia's contributions allowed her daughter, Laymana, to replace the original head of the Della Rosa household and become the new matriarch 200 years ago. Since then, Galen's family line has been the main branch in the Della Rosa household. Moving forward, Laymana only led the Della Rosa household for a short 50 years before handing the matriarch position over to her daughter, Lilana, and then joining her mother, Laetitia, at the sacred Tirtha. After Laymana became the great shaman 100 years ago, Laymana and Lilana's positions in the sacred Tirtha and the Della Rosa household had not changed. However, Laymana's grandfather and mother, Galen and Laetitia, had seemingly faded into obscurity. Most people in the empire wouldn't find anything strange if they had read through the Della Rosa household's history. But when Vaan learned about it, he discovered one major point of alarm and suspicion. While it seemed like the Della Rosa household had been in quite the spotlight, it had, in truth, been quite low-key. After all, given the Della Rosa household's financial strength, how could it not produce any excellent warriors to guard their family's interests against exterior threats? The Della Rosa household had made the whole empire believe it had given up power to entirely focus on playing a pivotal supporting role. Thus, in the eyes of the public, the Della Rosa household had no military power. Many people even believed the Della Rosa household delved into the art of healing because of their strong desire to save ill-fated lives through life-prolonging means, and the reason why the current great shaman could live so long despite her innate defect was due to the fruit of their labor. However, for any big family or clan, especially one as big as the Della Rosa household, it was nearly impossible for them not to care about power and the security it provided. As such, if the Della Rosa household had been accumulating its strength in secret all these years without anyone knowing, it could only be described with one word: terrifying. Furthermore, even if people knew or suspected the Della Rosa household had secretly raised a private military force, they still wouldn't believe it had anything to do with demons and Gehenna. After all, the Della Rosa household was full of excellent shamans and witch doctors. It was common knowledge that witches and demons were mortal enemies. They couldn't coexist, let alone join hands and work together. But, was that truly the case? This so-called common knowledge of the bad relationship between witches and demons mainly referred to the 7 witch kingdoms and Gehenna, which wasn't much different from any other countries and their hostile neighbors. The conflict between the 7 witch kingdoms and Gehenna was only much worse due to the differences in their races, beliefs, and power. Besides the witches from the 7 witch kingdoms, most of the witches in other countries had not seen a demon from Gehenna, let alone killed one. Since no prior hatred had been formed with the witches of other countries, who could confidently say the demons of Gehenna wouldn't try to recruit and convert them? Nothing was definite. In fact, it would even be easier for demons to convert the witches outside of the witch kingdoms into devil worshippers due to the persecution and discrimination against witches in other countries. Vaan felt a chill when he thought of that. There hasn't been another great war since the First Holy War 300 years ago, only small and medium skirmishes. Vaan pondered with concern. He couldn't imagine the consequences if these constant skirmishes only served as distractions for the great devils while their emissaries infiltrated Pangaea to convert believers on their behalf in these past 300 years. Logically speaking, it had a very high possibility of being true. After all, the great devils fed on negative emotions, and faith power strengthened their divinity. It was the worst possible situation for humanity. We're fucked, Vaan thought. He couldn't stop the frogs from catching fire if they had already jumped into the ponds of burning oil.